Homelessness is a massive problem there. Is that correct?
It's a heartbreaking problem in Los Angeles.
It is. How many homeless people have you invited into your home to live with you?
Honestly, I have actually invited homeless people while I was in law school. A couple.
No, with you and your family. You mentioned you have a son.
I started out working and helped.
Do you have any homeless people living with you?
I helped open a day labor center in
any
Denver,
homeless people
Colorado.
living with you? Do you have any homeless people living with you?
Excuse me?
Do you have any homeless people living with you from Los Angeles right now? It's a major problem. Have you let them into your home?
I do not have any homeless people currently living with me.
And I imagine that's in part to protect your family. The reason we have these laws is to make sure that we're protecting our community.
And I now recognize Mr. Cloud from Texas for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, witnesses, for being here. You know, I live in South Texas and obviously have been to the border a number of times, and I remember day one under the Biden administration where literally a wall was being built to protect our borders and was taken down. The border assets being a force multiplier for our Customs and Border Protection. There had been lights that were put up that literally they would not plug in under the Biden administration. We sat here in this committee and Mayorkas came here and told us time after time after time that we had to have legislative action to stop the massive onslaught that was coming into our country. Yet under President Trump, that was resolved pretty quickly. Now, we saw some work to do in Congress to close the loopholes that the Biden administration took advantage of. But what happened under the Biden administration, he turned what was supposed to be protection into processing. And, you know, all this massive, I call it immigration, except it wasn't immigration. Immigration's when you come here properly and legally. People coming across our border illegally. The open border policies are always under altruistic reasons, supposedly, you know, humanitarian efforts. Meanwhile, they turned a blind eye to the 300,000 children that were lost. I was down there and, you know, the cartels were renting a kid out, basically, from families to send them with false claims of being a family unit and the like. It was atrocious. Mr. Newman, I believe you're from Los Angeles. Is that correct? Or your organization is, anyway? You live in that area?
Yes, sir.
Homelessness is a massive problem there. Is that correct?
It's a heartbreaking problem in Los Angeles.
It is. How many homeless people have you invited into your home to live with you?
You know, honestly, I have actually invited homeless people while I was in law school. A couple.
No, with you and your family. You mentioned you have a son.
I started out working and helped.
Do you have any homeless people living with you?
I helped open a day labor center in Denver, Colorado.
Do you have any homeless people living with you?
Excuse me?
Do you have any homeless people living with you from Los Angeles right now? It's a major problem. Have you let them into your home?
I do not have any homeless people currently living with me.
And I imagine that's in part to protect your family. The reason we have these laws is to make sure that we're protecting our communities. You know, half the world's population live under $10 a day, and it's a misguided notion and actually an arrogant notion to say that we solve that problem by inviting everybody into the United States. We want people to prosper everywhere. And we should have partnerships with countries, you know, that hopefully allow them to flourish. But the idea that we're supposed to bring everybody here is a false notion. One of the things that was a real tragedy in this that kind of got overlooked is the massive. It was a new industry of bringing people into this country. Now, the messaging we see often from the left is like this was some organic movement of people coming to be free. The asylum claims were, you know, way blown out of proportion. They were really coming here for basically economic benefit as opposed to what true asylum is supposed to be for. But in the meantime, we saw this massive NGO organization basically funneling taxpayer dollars into these organizations. Now we see it on the other hand where not only the migration coming here is not organic, it's funded through NGOs, but we're seeing the protests are doing the same. Mr. Krikorian, could you speak to the NGO industrial complex that was stood up surrounding immigration?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's huge, and it is partly, in fact, funded by the federal government, and in a variety of ways. See, one thing that people obviously focus on is the NGOs in the United States that were flying people under Biden around the country. But there are U.S. taxpayer-funded groups outside the United States, sometimes through the UN or funded through the UN or funded directly, that were moving people, giving people debit cards in order to facilitate their movement toward the U.S. border. So the taxpayer under President Biden was funding NGOs abroad to move people to the border, and then NGOs inside the country to move people around the country.
So in a sense, we're forcing taxpayers to pay for the demise of their own country and the communities. And
you could put it that way, yes.
Now, has this stopped completely, or is this still?
Well, it hasn't stopped completely as far as I know, but most of the flow obviously is stopped because of the president's policies.
Are these organizations still at work and lying dormant, or?
I don't know. That's a good question. I assume they're lying dormant, eagerly waiting, like many of the illegal immigrants have said to reporters, waiting for the next administration and hoping that they will let them in.
Right, and as I mentioned at the beginning, we still have a lot of loopholes to close to make sure this doesn't happen. Thank you, Chairman. I yield back.
Thank you, Mr. Cloud, and I now yield.
Mr. Chair, I have a UC request, sir.
Without objection, go
Thank
for
you,
it.
sir. I ask unanimous consent to enter into the record February 23rd, 2026, an article from NPR entitled "A New Lawsuit Alleges DHS Illegally Tracked and Intimidated Observers," sir.
Without objection.
Thank you.
Is that it? All right. Now recognize Mr. Walkinshaw from Virginia for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We're back for another hearing of the Task Force on Defending Constitutional Rights and Exposing Institutional Abuses, and I'm glad again to be here because there are many violations of constitutional rights and institutional abuses taking place in this country. The Fourth Amendment to our Constitution expressly protects individuals against warrantless searches and guarantees the right to safety in our homes. It requires a judicial warrant before law enforcement can smash down your door, search your home, except under a few specific circumstances. That Fourth Amendment was born from our founding fathers' struggle against tyranny, specifically against the general warrants, I guess today we'd call them administrative warrants, that allowed British royal officials to conduct sweeping warrantless searches of homes and businesses to target their political enemies or those deemed insufficiently loyal to the king. Over the last year, DHS, ICE, CBP, and others have carried out these exact violations of the Constitution across the country under the direction of President Trump. I want to play a brief video of one of those violations.
In this house. There is kids in this house. Show the warrant first. Show the warrant. Show the warrant. There's nobody in here but my babies. Sugar, stay in your room and shut the door. Sis, I'm not even touching nobody. Get your hands off of me.
Show the warrant. There's nobody here but my babies. Chaos. This video of ICE invading the home of a U.S. citizen, a pediatric nurse, Tayana Gibson Brown, with military weapons and without a judicial warrant illustrates one of the many constitutional violations that ICE has perpetrated under this administration. And it wasn't an accident. An internal 2025 ICE memo signed by Acting Director Lyons directed agents to use administrative warrants signed not by Article 3 judges but immigration officers to forcibly enter private homes. Courts, including in a case filed by Ms. Gibson, found the use of these warrants to be unconstitutional. Mr. Chairman, when will we have a hearing of this task force on those violations of the Constitution? This week, our Republican colleagues are refusing to rein in these violations of the Constitution. In fact, they're greenlighting them. refusing common sense reforms, and pumping another $70 billion into smashing down the doors of American citizens without a warrant in violation of the Constitution. Mr. Beer, based on Cato's research, do you have a rough estimate of how many Fourth Amendment violations DHS has engaged in under this Trump administration?
Well, according to DHS, they burst into people's homes without warrants at least 28 times. I don't believe that number for even a minute. I have seen personally videos of at least 28 encounters, and they're not recording all of those incidents where people homes are being invaded without warrants.
I analogize these searches and seizures to the very searches and seizures that our founding fathers objected to, that the redcoats were engaged in. Do you think that's an appropriate analogy?
Absolutely. John Adams called it the start of the American Revolution when James Otis exposed what the Crown was doing with these general warrants going into people's homes. And again, it was from judges that were not independent of the Crown. They served at the pleasure of the Crown, and if they turned down the request for a warrant, they could be fired. And that's the same thing with an immigration and customs enforcement supervisor. If they don't do the will of President Trump, they'll be fired too, as they have been.
Thank you, Mr.